rates, a larger increment will be appropriate at our September meeting. So I think that you took the example of if you are at 2.1% in 2024 or beyond, then the increment adjustment will be higher. The answer is yes.
Thank you, President Lagarde. And the next question goes to Annette Weisbach of CNBC. Annette, please, here in the middle.
President Lagarde, thank you very much for taking my question. I have one on what are you expecting in terms of time lag? If you raise rates in July, when will you see an effect on inflation and inflation expectations? And will that ultimately also mean that you have to lift rates to a neutral rate? And that would be my second question, because I think there's a lot of guessing around what you think the neutral rate actually is. Is it 1.5? Is it 2% for the euro area? Perhaps you could give us a bit more of an insight. Thank you.
So do we expect that our July interest rate hikes will have an immediate effect on inflation? The answer to that is no. And I would like to develop that a little bit. First of all, because of the anticipation of our monetary policy, because of the inflation and growth outlook, financing costs have already moderately but significantly increased, whether you look at corporate bonds, whether you look at sovereign bonds, whether you look at bank, of course. Those financing costs have increased. And with the signal that we're giving here, particularly concerning the short-term rates, this signal will continue to have an impact on financing costs. Now, typically, monetary policy decisions have a longer-term impact in relation to inflation itself. So we have to stay the course, be determined, committed to delivering the 2%. But we cannot expect that to happen on the 22nd of August for a decision that, 22nd of July for a decision that we would have made in July. On the other hand, because you mentioned inflation expectations, we observe that inflation expectations are well anchored. And we certainly want to indicate to those who form expectations, whether they're markets, whether they are experts, whether they're consumers, that we are determined to delivering on our target of 2% in the medium term. And therefore, expectations should absolutely remain anchored because we will deliver. Oh, the neutral rate. This is a topic that we have deliberately decided not to have on the occasion of this Governing Council meeting. And I'm sure that we will ad nauseum argue as to whether it is 0.96 or 1.97 or beyond or below or whatever. Suffice to say that the neutral rate over the course of time, for multiple reasons having to do with productivity, with demographics and all the rest of it, has gone down. But where it stands exactly, we have decided not to discuss it on this Governing Council meeting. And believe me, we had plenty to discuss, so we saved a little bit for later. And, you know, to be fair as well, it's not something that you can observe and determine with precision today. Is as you get closer, we will understand better where exactly it stands. And we will debate it. I have no illusion on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Dan Ballacher of Volkskrant. Dan, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Is the end of the asset purchasing program a good time for you maybe to adjust the forward guiding policy? Because when it was introduced in 2013, it was meant to manage market expectations. But now it seems like the ECB would have stopped the purchases earlier, if not for the promises made, even though there was an extraordinary inflation-inducing event like the war in Ukraine. Is the tail, financial markets, not wagging the dog, the ECB, instead of the other way around? My second question is related to this one. The ECB believes inflation will fall down back to target by 2024. But for most of the past decade, the ECB also consistently thought that the inflation rate, which was then too low, of course, would converge to its target, and that also didn't happen. So how firm are your beliefs that you are going to succeed now, as historical experiences do not imply great credibility?
First of all, on the issue of forward guidance, I'm assuming that you're referring to the forward guidance relating to asset purchases. Yeah. So if you look at that forward guidance, we have actually changed it. If you recall, the forward guidance that we had referred to favorable financing conditions and to accommodative, there was a qualifier as well, but it referred to the accommodative aspect of our monetary policy. We have changed that, and if you look at the third paragraph on the second page, refer to the fact that we will do so for as long as necessary to maintain ample, not favorable, ample liquidity conditions and an appropriate monetary policy stance. So we take account of the change that has indeed taken place. And you're right, we are in a different universe. A lot of the tools, the forward guidance, the considerations over the last 11 years had to do with exactly the opposite movement, trying to bring inflation up because it was too low and often at risk of deflation. Now we are in the opposite situation, where inflation is too high and we need to bring it back to our target of 2% over the medium term. Now, how confident are we about our projections? First of all, I'd like to say that our staff does the best work they can do and apply their whole consciousness and professionalism to producing those projections. Second, those projections are not just the ECB. The projections that you have in front of you are the projections of the entire Euro system. So it's the ECB and 19 national central banks, including the great Bank of the Netherlands, which has actively and always actively participates in this exercise. So it's a cohesive work that is done, that is tedious, that is iterative, and that really checks everything. Third, it is clear that the massive energy prices hike and the war in Ukraine and the fast pace of the recovery have taken all forecasters by surprise. You know, I thought you would ask me a question like that. So what did I do? I looked at other, I hope I can find it now. Anyway, it doesn't really matter if I don't find it. The point being that all international institutions, all forecasters of repute have actually made the same mistake of underestimating or not anticipating some of the developments, such as the war, such as the energy crisis. Fourth point, I think we, the Euro system, and the ECB in particular, we are the only central bank which has gone back to the work that was done, which has looked under every stone to understand where the errors came from. And I use the word errors with some trepidation because it's misforecasting caused by very unpredictable events. 3/4 of the forecasting errors is actually attributable to energy prices, and the rest is largely attributable to bottlenecks that have lasted longer than had been anticipated. So, again, they do everything they can as well as they can. They make the same kind of forecast as other international institutions. Events that have developed are not captured in either models or sometimes just the sheer imagination of us all when we talk about the war at the doorstep of Europe. And fourth, we do the introspective exercise of trying to find out where it went wrong, and we will continue doing so in the future because we have to improve, no question.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Mark Schreurs of Börsenzeitung. Mark, please.
Yes, thanks for taking my questions. The first one is on reinvestments. In the past, you've stressed several times the importance of the stock of assets compared to the flow. Now you have reaffirmed to reinvest, especially the PEP payments, principal payments, at least until the end of 2024. That means a huge monetary stimulus for years. Is that appropriate if you, at the same time, are talking about normalizing monetary policy? And the second one, just for clarification, why do you today already exclude a 50 basis point hike in July?
On the reinvestment policy that we decided for PEP and for the APP, both of them will now be operative as of the 1st of July for APP and has already begun for PEP. It is a matter that we will be discussing within the Governing Council, which we have decided not to debate today. We had, as I said, plenty to do already in the last couple of days, but we will be looking at it. And I have to tell you something. There are some of us on the Governing Council who will be interested not only to deploy flexibility, if warranted, on classes of assets, by jurisdictions, over temporality, but some of us are also interested in looking at how we can support the financing of the measures needed against climate change. I said already before that a green LTRO was interesting to consider. I think the reinvestment decisions that we will make in the coming months and years might also be inspired by this concern that we have. Okay? So that's point number one. Your point number two is, why not 15 July? Well, we are coming out of 11 years of no interest rate move. We are on our path to exit negative interest rates soon. It is good practice, and it is actually often done by most central banks around the world, to start with an incremental increase that is sizable, not excessive, and that indicates a path. As I said, the decision that we have made today are not just one intention of one single month of July. It's a whole journey that will take us back to the 2% target in the medium term. We also want to observe how markets are going to operate. And as I have mentioned, we couple our July determination with our September indication.
Thank you. Next question, Martin Arnold. I think you raised your hand, of the Financial Times.
I did. Thank you for taking my two questions. Hello, Madame Lagarde. Could I ask, first of all, is this announcement today a signal that you are dropping gradual normalization in preference for a whatever-it-takes approach to tackling undesirably elevated inflation? And secondly, could I ask on tackling fragmentation that you mentioned earlier, the new instruments that could be designed and launched, would those only be designed and launched once the existing instruments, i.e. PEP reinvestments, have been fully utilized? Thank you.
I want to take you back to the monetary policy statement, because I think that the key principles that we will be inspired by in order to be predictable by you, but also to set the rules according to which we will proceed, are captured on the top of page 2 and say the following: throughout this process, the Governing Council will maintain optionality, data dependency, gradualism, and flexibility in the conduct of monetary policy. So, all four will matter, and there will be circumstances when one might be more important than another, and there might be other circumstances where the pecking order will change. So I think by doing that, we are trying to have as much optionality as we can, be able to use flexibility if and when warranted and necessary, be as data dependent as we have demonstrated and will continue to demonstrate, and also deploy the gradualism that will be appropriate given the circumstances. And I think in times of great uncertainty, gradualism is probably appropriate, more so than if the path is clear, well identified, and we all understand where we are heading. On the second issue, I just want to yet again come back